Okay, then we will officially call the meeting to order. And Jennifer, would you do roll call, please?
Jenkins,
Present.
Meadows,
Present.
Bettelonga,
Present.
Board,
Present.
and Daniels is absent, and do have a phone.
We have a quorum. Okay. So I need a motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, indicate approval by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been approved. See if there's any public commentary.
Mr. Nelson, I can see that you are there. Did you want to add any commentary? I'll just give you a second. Okay, we will continue, and there's an opportunity to have public commentary at the end of the meeting as well, if you decide you want to talk at the end of the meeting.
Okay, well, we are in new business, and before we go to items, we have a new council liaison to welcome.
Thanks.
Would you like to share just a bit of information about you for the board?
So I was elected in 2020. I represent the 5th Ward, which is on Ann Arbor's west side, and lived in Ann Arbor since 2000. Went away for a couple of years, but ended up coming back, and actually lived here as a kid as well. I went to Northside Elementary and then moved out of town for a little bit. So been off and on here my whole life.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, well, we welcome you.
Thanks.
All right.
And Dr. Meadows is our board chair, and Patricia Jenkins is our vice chair. We just discovered in the last 5 minutes.
You're going, am I in an alternate? We're back. Okay. Okay, new business item 23-0086, the resolution to, motion to approve the resolution to approve the amended fiscal year 23 payment standard effective date for the Ann Arbor Housing Commission voucher programs. Need a motion? We did the minutes? I thought we did. Okay, let's roll back. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, indicate approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. Okay, item 23-0089. Minutes have been approved. So on to new business. So I need a motion for the resolution to approve the amended fiscal year 23 payment standard effective date for the Ann Arbor Housing Commission voucher programs. Can I get a motion? Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the item?
I'll let Nisha talk about this item.
Okay.
And I've got it up on the screen, if you want to see it.
So I am going to provide just a bit of background about the payment standard. I know you guys are familiar, but I'm gonna take a bit. So the payment standard is what the Housing Commission has to determine, and the short and easy answer or definition for a payment standard is the subsidy, the dollar amount of subsidy that we give to our families for our housing choice voucher program. Excuse me, the payment standard is derived from the HUD fair market rents. HUD publishes their fair market rents annually around October of every year. We have the responsibility as a housing authority of taking that fair market rent and determining whether or not we are going to provide subsidy for our families between the range of 90% up to 120% of the FMR. We are extremely generous, PHA. Therefore, we have decided to establish our payment standard at 120% of the FMR, which is extremely beneficial for our families for obvious reasons, but especially because, the rents in our community, Washtenaw County, are extremely high. So that's a bit of background about what the payment standard is. So the staff presented to the board, I want to say back in November, the revised annual payment standard as we do every year, and you guys approved it according to the new FMRs and the amounts that we proposed to you. A month later, HUD approved all PHAs to apply a waiver to the payment standard. So we can essentially afford our families the opportunity of receiving a higher payment standard earlier in their annual recertification process than they normally would. So we brought the payment standard resolution back to you guys, I want to say in December, and had that approved. So the resolution that was presented to you guys on Monday was amended again to make sure that we are accommodating all of our families and essentially capturing all of the various activities that they participate in. I don't want to use the word impose because it was like, oh my God, we didn't take into consideration this particular incident. But there were a couple of situations where some of our families had relocated to new units. And at those, the relocation, in addition, we had a couple of families who had some extremely high rental increases. So as a result of that, there was an extreme rental burden on the families. When we presented the payment standard resolution to you guys back in December, we made the payment standard effective January 1st. We would like to reverse that decision and ask for you all to approve a payment standard effective December 2nd. And that way, all of those families who were impacted for that particular period of time, we can actually make a correction to their account and give them the benefit. They won't be imposed to that extremely high rent burden. We can help them with that cost. So that's what we're presenting to you today.
Can you tell us how many families were affected?
Off the top of my head, I know of 4. One of
One
which,
is enough, but.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of which, it was a disabled individual who it would have been extremely difficult for him to find another unit. So this would allow us to, absorb some of that increased cost that, he doesn't have to pay for if we were to approve this resolution. He had a rental increase that was effective back in December. And the other families were, one was a new admission and the other 2 were relocations. They were moving in into their other units. And I mean, the market is just really, really tough. Yeah. It's just really tough, which is one of the reasons a few months ago, we brought a resolution to the board to extend the amount of time that families search with their vouchers to 180 days. So anything that we can do to try to, make housing successful for our families. That's what we're in the business of.
Any other questions?
I think it's so clear.
Hmm?
I think the need is so clear.
Okay. All right, hearing no questions, all in favor of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission fiscal year 23, fiscal year payment standard effective date for the Ann Arbor Housing Commission voucher programs, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, resolution passes.
Dr. Meadows, this next one is actually a public hearing rather than a resolution, so I couldn't get it to look right on the agenda, so
Okay,
you just need to announce this a public hearing, and then we'll have Wenisha do a presentation, and perhaps our guest who's waiting might be there to speak on that
okay.
or to listen.
So let's note that item 23-0087 is a public hearing. The Ann Arbor Housing Commission fiscal year 23, and that's July 2023 to June 2024 annual plan and moving to work plan public hearing. I need a motion to approve the hearing. I don't need.
a motion.
All right, then, Nation, you're on.
So you guys are aware that annually we revisit the business operations of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. And a part of that business is reviewing our administrative plan, making sure that we are staying true to our mission, deciding whether or not we want to make any changes to our programs, our policies, procedures, so forth and so on. We do an annual report of how many families are on our waiting list, how many we've served. We record any new programs that we've established, in addition to any new housing developments that we are in the process of, or trying to purchase, build, or we've just completed. So the annual plan captures all of that information in addition to all of the administrative plan changes that we've made over the past year, the past fiscal year.
You know what you want me to show.
Did you scroll down to the RAB?
All the way to the bottom.
Yeah, all the way down to the bottom. The majority of the report is very basic. So the order of the report is we first report on our wait list information. We then begin to report on all of the changes that we made in our administrative plan. Then we discuss any financial plans that we had in the upcoming year, in addition to any plans that we have to deconcentrate poverty, new projects, new developments, adding new project-based vouchers to our program or anything like that. And then we also detail all of the various programs that we have and give a very brief status update on how we're doing in all of those different programs. We also provide a very short synopsis about the work that we're doing in the community with a lot of the nonprofit organizations that we partner with. So we're also required to have a public meeting with our resident advisory board. We invite pretty much everybody. Well, we let the public know that the meeting is available. We had that meeting back in November. The RAB, members of the RAB attended that meeting, and at that meeting, we discussed our Moving to Work program. So as you remember, we were awarded the Moving to Work program back in April of 2022. Now that we are designated as a Moving to Work program, we work with you, the public, the staff, to determine what measures are we going to implement now that we are an MTW agency. Let me back up and provide something. I apologize. So we are a public housing authority. The programs that we operate is housing choice voucher, tenant-based voucher program. That's essentially when our families, I kind of explain it as they have the subsidy in their pocket. They go out to the private market and we assist them with their monthly rental payments. We also have a project-based voucher program. We own 18 properties throughout the city of Ann Arbor. The subsidy is attached to the units. So there are very particular regulations that goes along with both of those programs. Back in 2021, actually, over the past couple of years, we've continuously had conversation with the public, the board members, as well as our program participants to discuss the Housing Commission's interest in applying for the Moving to Work program. So when there finally was an opportunity for us to apply for that program, we did. And we applied under the landlord incentive cohort number 4. So when HUD proposed the Moving to Work application, there was a very specific criteria that the Housing Commission had to qualify for to even place an application. So the prior 3 cohorts, we did not meet the qualifications. So we finally met the qualifications under cohort 4, landlord incentives. We placed the application and we were approved. So this is great. What it does is it gives us an opportunity to take the funding that we receive for our voucher program and have more flexibility in those funding dollars. So we're no longer simply obligated to spending our dollars on housing assistance. We can do a little bit more, like help pay for security deposits, application fees, damages, so forth and so on. In addition to that, it gives us an opportunity to massage some of the regulations. That the intent is to not just make our families more self-sufficient, make the program more self-sufficient, efficient and effective. But it gives you an opportunity to tailor your housing program according to your market, your area, right? So this is what we've been discussing. This is what we've been discussing over the last couple of months with our program participants. Thank you. With our program participants, and we had the public meeting back in November. Any questions?
Is it all? Typically questions hit about 2 in the morning.
The moving to work incentives that that are under part number 4 are very tailored to landlord recruitment, which is sort of perfect considering the timing in the community. So all of the activities that we have selected to participate in are to provide incentives to landlords that with the hopes that we will keep landlords on the program and attract new landlords to the program. So some of those activities that we decided were we will help pay for damages to the unit up to a certain dollar amount. We also agreed that we would pay a sort of thanks for being our landlord loyalty type of reward. If one of our families move out and you agree to let another one of our families move in, we'll give you some sort of financial incentive to say thank you for continuing to participate with us. Same thing for new landlords that come to the program. If you are a new landlord and you come to our program, we'll also provide you an incentive payment for as a new. Another incentive that we decided to do was to assist with security deposits, rental insurance. Some landlords required families to have rental insurance. That's something that Section 8 didn't cover before. Now we can. So we would cover rental insurance. In addition to that, application fee if necessary. Utilities, if a family is having troubles, getting their utilities turned on because they had a back old bill or outstanding balance or something, we agreed to pay for that. In addition to that, we agreed to, so right now, we do inspections on our units every 2 years. So we are proposing to change that to every 3 years. As long as the landlord meets a certain criteria and continue to perform well, then we'll, complete those inspections every 3 years as opposed to every 2 years. In addition to that, prior to our families moving into the units, we inspect them. The MTW activity now allows us to inspect the unit up to 90 days before a family moves in. So it's sort of like, we'll just inspect a bunch of units with the hopes that, our families are going to move in and that inspection is good for 90 days. And it's just sort of, it reduces the delay because the process for our families is once they find a unit, they let us know what unit it is. We do it's a rent burden estimate test to determine whether or not the demographics of that unit is going to fit the family and the rent is going to be affordable for the family. Once we determine that the rent is affordable, we do a rent reasonable test. We measure the cost of that unit to similar units in the community to make sure that the landlord isn't asking for an outrageous rent compared to other units. Once it passed those 2 tests, we ask for an inspection. So that's at least a week. Right, all 3 of those tests, that's at least a week. So if we can get a unit inspected ahead of time, then we only have the 2 tests that we have to, go through. And essentially, a family can drop off the paperwork. We can get that unit approved today and give the family, authorization to go ahead and sign at least the same day. So to cut down the amount of time that the landlord is waiting to fill the unit, the family is waiting to move into the unit. So those are the activities that we discussed, that we are proposing for the MTW program. Some of the other items that we discussed at the meeting included things that we would like to implement in the future. So our MTW landlord incentive activities, we're asking to implement those activities at the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1st. So everything that I just mentioned. Over the course of the next fiscal year, we'll continue to have meetings with the public and our program participants, as well as the staff, to discuss other MTW activities that we want to implement. For example, under the MTW program, we're required to establish a reasonable rent policy. And essentially what that means is we have to do two things. We have to determine a new rent structure. And determining that new rent structure could mean accepting the same structure that we have right now. Or we can adopt a new rent structure. Some of the rent structures that are proposed under the MTW program, for example, is a flat subsidy structure. Hypothetically, and these are really rough numbers, I haven't ran numbers across anything at all. So hypothetically, I can say a family size of one, we'll give them $1,000. Two, $1,200. Three, you know what I mean, $1,500, so forth and so on. Or we can impose a flat rent structure. Whereas we simply say, this is the amount of rent that we'll pay on your behalf, right? And you have to pick up the cost of the rest of it. Then there's also a tiered rent system where we could identify a range. If you are in the income bracket between 0 and let's say $10,000, this is how much money you pay towards your rent. Between the $10,001 and $20,000, this is how much you pay. There's also an opportunity for a step increase rent tier. Is that what it's called? Stepped rent. Where essentially every year your rent will increase by some dollar. So
Unless
these
you're
are,
on a fixed income. There's exceptions.
so
Yeah.
all of the activities, we have the opportunity to include exceptions. Every single activity that we decide to implement, we literally have to determine what program is going to be under this policy and what families will qualify for this particular policy. Are you going to have any exemptions under this policy? So literally every single one, we have to identify those things. So one of the other things that's really big in the MTW program, a lot of agencies impose a work requirement for anyone that is not disabled or not ill. They impose a work. We can do the same. So these are some of the things that we talked about at the public meeting. And naturally, we got a lot of pushback. Of course, we got a lot of pushback. Well, these don't sound like things that are going to benefit me, the customer. It sounds like it's going to cost me more money. Or there are other things that we can do to offset those additional costs. We have an opportunity of increasing our allowance. So currently under the program, any household that has minors in the house, they receive a $480 annual allowance for each minor. In addition to that, if there are any elderly or disabled individuals in the house, those elderly and disabled individuals get $400 per person for the course of the year. So that type of, incentive adds up. In addition to that, families who have out-of-pocket medical expenses, out-of-pocket expenses related to disability costs, say, for example, you have an assistance animal and you get that assistance animal regularly treated at the, groomers or whatever. That's an expense that can be written off. In addition to that, childcare, medical expenses, disability expenses. So we can actually modify the HUD regulation around those expenses right now. We can increase it and give you a flat dollar. We can make the decision for all of that. There are other activities would include alternative income, inclusion and exclusion. So right now, we count income for wages, all adult members. If there is an adult in the household between the ages of 18 and 24 that goes to work, but they also attend school full-time, we only count $480 of their income. So if they make $10,000 a year, we only count $480. if they're attending school. We can reverse that particular regulation and waive the income for anyone that is between the ages of 18 and 24. That's something that I proposed to the group, and all of the attendees at that meeting, they really like the idea of something like that. And it's much more in line with today's families, right? You have a lot of families that have adult children in the household. Those adult children work, but they don't contribute to the rent,
Right.
right?
Right.
However, currently under the Section 8 and Public Housing, project-based voucher program, that's not the case. If that minor, not minor, if that adult child is employed, that income is counted in the household and it is determined, using for a portion of their rent. So that's one of the things that the families like the idea of. We can also increase or allow the family income inclusions and exclusions. So that was an example of excluding income. We can also make determinations of any sort of source of income that we include. Right now, we can decide to not include it. So for example, child support, which can be extremely high in some cases, but in most cases, it's extremely sporadic and erratic. You know what I mean? A lot of our families cannot depend on child support. And it's actually more trouble than it's worth trying to get the verification for it. It's getting the verification for it has gotten a lot better, but it's still relatively difficult. So a lot of the MTW activities that we have the opportunity of imposing, and we discussed what we're thinking about those activities in the sense of how beneficial is it to the family and how much work does it cause for the housing commission, right? Because when it becomes extremely difficult for us to obtain documentation to make determination on how much rent a family is going to pay, we spend a lot of time constantly going back and forth with banks, employers, medical professionals, because we have to verify all of these things. If you say that you are disabled and you pay prescription, you have out-of-pocket costs for prescriptions, and you work at Macy's, we have to verify literally everything that you say for every single member in the household. And 90% of these entities have no requirement to reply to us. We are required to make 2 attempts to that entity before we can accept a third party, an alternative type of documentation. So 2 attempts within every 14 days. So essentially we have to wait 30 days before we can say, hey, provide me this piece of paper.
Do you want to pause for a second?
Yes.
Do you want to either see if people have questions for Renisha, or I can see if the person that's in the room wants to speak from here? Either one.
Let's see if he has something to say.
Mr. Nelson, hi, Irene, I see you're there too. Mr. Nelson, if you want to speak during this public hearing, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll give you a second here if that's something you're interested in doing, and let you speak. You do not have to speak. I just want to make sure if you want an opportunity to, that you have it. Irene is our, she works for us. I don't know if you've met her. I can't remember if she's been one of our meetings yet.
So if you guys have any questions, just interrupt me and, I'll feel free to stop and answer any questions that you have.
One question, a super basic one that I probably should ask at the beginning. So when you talked about trying to recruit new landlords to the program, housing vouchers, are they? I think we don't allow housing voucher discrimination. in the city. Is that accurate or not accurate?
The easy answer is yes, we do not allow.
Okay,
Yes.
and but it happens and it's, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I had that.
Yes.
Landlords are smarter than we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of other things that can be used, and so this is sort of landlords that are welcoming.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure I had that correct in my head. Okay.
Oh, and I'm actually glad you asked that question because it reminds me that we also have a meeting very specifically for landlords to talk about this program and just some of the experiences that they have, any concerns that they have of us as a commission and program administrator, and basically just run these ideas by them. And obviously, you know, they were absolutely in love with the idea of more money. Right.
And if that makes them participate, we will give them more money.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, because the thing about it is, and it's, I don't think that we should brush over the idea for a landlord to be successful, they have to collect rent. We should not brush over the idea of that, right? It costs for them to maintain the homes. We have an expectation that the home is gonna be safe, decent, you know? So if us providing additional dollars to them to help them do that, I certainly don't have a problem with it. One of the other activities that we talked about was currently right now, our families are required to annually recertify to determine whether or not they are continuously eligible for the program. We are very much considering to implement a recertification every 3 years as opposed to once a year. That would be great. And it not only did that go over well, but that is extremely beneficial for our families that are on fixed incomes, especially pensions and social securities, because if they do get an increase in income, it's usually not a huge increase. And it will give them an opportunity to, you know, have that increase in income for a little while before they have to pay rent, which I think is extremely reasonable because we as individuals who are not living in subsidized housing, your rent doesn't increase every time you get a pay increase. You know what I mean? So I think it's a fairly reasonable request and activity that we can implement for our program participants. So in addition to conducting recertifications every 3 years, we have to make a decision. So right now, you're required to do your recertification annually. However, every time your income goes up, you have to report it to us. Every time it goes down, you should report it to us. Very, very important. When it goes down, you should report it to us, but you're not required. However, when it goes up, you must report it to us. It is required. If we impose the recertification every 3 years, we then would look at our interim policy to say that if there is a decrease, you can report it, but how often? We make a decision of how often you can make a decrease request, right? We wouldn't require you to submit any interims in the event that your rent increase, your income increase. But we would require you to report a decrease, but we would have to make determinations of how many you can have in a 1-year period. So the HUD standard for that particular activity is at minimum, the PHA has to allow 1 interim a year. At minimum. And I think that that's extremely reasonable. Because it gives family, again, an opportunity to, a lot of things in life can change in 3 years, right? And it can be extremely beneficial to a family. So the idea of that went over very well with the audience. And those were really the things that we talked about implementing for the following fiscal year 20, what, 25.
24.
24.
Right?
24 is that
Oh,
is
you're right,
July,
it's
right?
25,
So
you're right,
it'll
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
25.
Mhm.
So those are the things, and that's the other thing, right? So MTW is new to us. So we also have to learn the program, the reporting requirements, so forth and so on. So we certainly don't want to bite off more than we can chew.
Mhm.
We want to take this slow and steady. We want to, and we are required to measure, right, and analyze the results of everything that we implement. So with that said, we want to make sure that the things that we're implementing, we're giving it enough time that we cannot, that we, the staff, not only can get used to it, get the families used to it, analyze it, make sure that it's worked, see what sort of impact that it's having without being worried about everything else. The MTW program also gives you the opportunity to say, oh, this isn't working, I'm going to change it next year.
Nice.
Oh, this isn't working, I don't want to do it at all next year. So it's really great in the sense that it provides you a lot of flexibility to figure out what works for your community and your organization. And I really like the idea of that. We are required to determine an impact analysis as well as a hardship policy. So, thank you. So the impact analysis, it's a good idea for every MTW activity that you implement, but it is required for specific MTW activities. And this is the impact analysis, and it's very specific to the activities that we've selected.
Mhm.
Vacancy loss, damage claim, other landlord incentives, HQS, alternative inspection schedule. I did not touch on vacancy loss. So vacancy loss incentive is essentially if one of our families move out of the unit, during that time frame that the landlord is turning the unit, if they rent that unit to another family, we will give them an incentive payment that will compensate them for that lost vacancy. So essentially, what we anticipate, how the program is going to be impacted is the community is going to love us. That's what we anticipate.
Yeah.
We also anticipate that we will get, we'll retain some landlords. We will definitely retain some landlords, and I think that we'll actually also attract new landlords to the program. As far as cost, it is going to be a little bit more expensive to operate the program initially, but I think that over time there will be a savings benefit as well. So I think that it may actually be cost effective in that sense. So one of the things that we are anticipating is as we're implementing all of these activities, especially the re-examination every 3 years, the income exclusions, inclusions. It'll give families an opportunity to increase their income without some sort of immediate penalty, right? Encouraging self-sufficiency, that's the whole idea. It encourages not just self-sufficiency, but also housing stability. Once we have housing stability, that in turn is going to reduce cost, right? And we're also hoping that all of these activities is going to actually encourage families to put themselves in positions where they're no longer eligible for the program because they income out, right? That's always the idea, is to put the family in a place where they can income out of the program. They no longer need the subsidy. We can pull more people from the late waiting list and help the next bunch of people. So the other thing that we anticipate is that in the immediate, we anticipate that we'll probably pull more people off of the waiting list because, we're have more landlords, housing stock is going to increase, blah, blah, blah. But once we're fully leased, we also anticipate that folks are going to wait a little bit longer on our waiting list to get housed because historically, I've been here at the Housing Commission for a very long time. I won't call you. Don't worry about it. It's not important. And in my time, last month, was it last month or November, we got the 16 vouchers. That has never happened before, where we just got regular Section 8 vouchers. We always get special program vouchers. Housing commissions, they never get more vouchers. We've gotten more vouchers, so I think that that is attributed to the management of our program, right? Some of the innovative ideas that we've implemented, the partnerships that we've implemented, and you know, Jennifer, the things that Jennifer does. More work. More work. So with that said, it's unlikely that we'll get more vouchers, and really getting more vouchers is the only way to pull more people off of the wait list. Other than that, we pull people off of the wait list because of attrition. People have to leave the program before we can pull more people off of the wait list to put them on. So by increasing housing stability, increasing housing stock, it's a very strong possibility that we anticipate that people are going to stay on our wait list just a little bit longer, so we can filter, you know, the other folks through the system. But the other thing that we anticipate is that our termination rate is going to go down. Right? If we're providing that gap funding for our families, that should reduce the termination rate. If we are providing our landlords with additional assistance, that is going to prevent them from filing eviction notices on our families, that is going to reduce the termination rates. So we anticipate that there's not going to be a tremendous impact to the program, but definitely a positive impact to the program. And as far as the hardship policy, so we have to write a policy that basically says, we're going to impose all of these new rules, but if you run into hard times, we're going to give you a, you know, a postponement or a waiver or something like that. So that's essentially what the hardship policy is. And the hardship policy applies to our HQS inspections. It also applies to our rent calculation determination. It applies to our repayment agreement policy. You guys are familiar with our repayment agreement policy. It also applies to our recertification policy, as well as our minimum rent policy. So essentially, what the hardship policy says is, if you owe money, or if you are responsible for a portion of rent and you're not able to pay that portion or pay the amount due to the Housing Commission for your repayment agreement, if you're having a hardship and you meet this criteria, we'll give you a delay of some sort, 30 days, 90 days, 180 days. You have to pay us the money back. However, we'll give you a reprieve for this particular period of time. So right now we're having a discussion with our staff, but this is still a open comment period for the public to make comments to the policy as well. So we're having a discussion with the staff to make sure that the policy that we've written isn't burdensome for us, the staff, because that also means that we have to track it, right? And make sure that we are complying with the rules that we set, in addition to the families are complying with the rules that were set. We want to make sure that it's not just easy for us to apply this new policy, but we're also want to make sure that it's easy for the families to provide us the information that we're asking for to determine whether or not they qualify for the policy. So the hardship policy is subject to change.
It's
And-
not, I did not attach it. to
You didn't
this.
attach it, okay. It is on our website. Because it's required to be posted. But so the hardship policy is subject to change. I'll be meeting with the staff within the next couple of weeks to discuss the hardship policy and just make sure that we're on the right track. The one thing that I don't want to pretend is if I'm meeting with customers every day and having conversations with customers every day. So it's our caseworkers that are actually meeting with the customers, having the conversations. So their input is going to be extremely valuable. In addition to the customers, their input is going to be extremely valuable to that policy. So other than that, once we have closed our public comment period, regarding the annual plan and the moving to work supplement plan. We will have the correct president of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission sign the certification document. And we will be submitting that plan to HUD no later than April.
Yeah, I think we're adopting it in March this year.
Okay.
But this is a very big deal to have this new designation, and I don't know if it was totally clear, but we have administrative funds and we have housing assistance payment, which is the rent subsidy. Now, under this designation, it's one pot of money. And that is part of what also gives us the flexibility of the things Manisha's talking about, because under the old rules, you had to follow the HUD rules, and now HUD's like, we'll let you experiment and see how it goes. So that's a really big deal. That's why
Great,
Manisha's been talking for 40 minutes, because it's a lot. There's a lot of
Mhm.
things that we're thinking about and changing and looking at.
Our moving parts. Any questions?
Just curious, if some of these seem like they're gonna be really incredible changes for families in terms of like not having to count, not having to say child support or, put that into
Mhm.
income and, which hopefully means extra money here,
Right,
to be
right.
able to work with. Is there a way to track how these changes are impacting families? Is that? part of
We
it?
are required to track it.
Yeah.
So, and that's essentially why we're biting off,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We're
Yeah.
trying to basically eat it out. So we're gonna do it in small pieces. Because we have to also develop a tracking
Mhm.
mechanism.
Mhm.
So yes, we will.
Yeah.
Yes, we will, and we will be reporting on it annually.
Yeah.
So next year, when we do this presentation, it will actually have the results of what was impact, how it was impact, and
Mhm.
our decision, make an analysis of how it was impact moving forward.
All right,
And we do not need to vote on this. It's just.
so we are now, sitting on a public hearing.
The question I have, when I think of the last have the self-sufficient program
Mhm,
already,
mhm.
is that gonna be incorporated?
can.
with-
We can,
Okay,
yeah, that is also an option.
okay.
That is also an option. One of the things that Jennifer wants to do is change our project-based voucher cap. So right now, we're capped at the number of units we can place a project-based voucher on, according to our budget that we have, and as well as the size of the program. So one of the things that we want to do is ask for HUD to give us a waiver so we can actually put more project-based vouchers into the community, because I think that we think that that's just the best way to increase the affordable housing stock in the community. But with the family self-sufficiency program, we also have an opportunity of changing some of the regulations with the FSS program, which we haven't touched because HUD just changed the regulations of the FSS program effective November 1st. So that's something that we have to get accustomed to in the first place before we even think about changing any additional rules to the FSS.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we're all set. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We will now move to item 23-0088. I need a resolution to approve the Ann Arbor Housing Commission audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. I need
Motion.
a motion. Is there a second? The motion and seconded. Any discussion?
This is a Uli item. So Uli, do you want me to bring anything up? Or you want to start talking and I'll bring it up?
I can either, if you guys have it up over there, I can basically just, or you can share it. I don't care, whatever is easier, since I'm.
Yeah.
Um,
Have it up already? You want me to
Okay.
go to the financial section?
sure, let's just actually start. I mean, the audit is, the good news is, the audit was, clean again. it was a little bit challenging to kind of put together only because of all the changes that we're talking about, or that Wanisha was talking about from a programmatic perspective, that kind of gave us a little heartburn because it was new to everybody how to report it. And we're still not complete, we're still not, we don't have our unaudited submission approved by HUD. So we'll see how they like the way that we have MTW broken out from the regular Section 8 program, since it was kind of like a split in the middle of the year, actually 9 months into the year. The audit is, like I said, it's clean. If you kind of go to page 10, the first 9 pages that are marked, the marked 9 pages is basically the management discussion and analysis. That gives you kind of the perspective from, from us, from management of the financial results. But the audit itself kind of starts, the audit schedules start on page 10 with the statement of net position or balance sheet. Our current assets are at 4.125 million. We have non-current assets that are basically just capital assets that are about $4.22 million. And then going to the liability sections, we have current liabilities of about 1.5 million. Total non-current liabilities of 615,000, so total liabilities of $2.126 million. Our net position is,
Page are you on? Because I don't see any of those numbers you just said.
page 10, the actual marked page 10. So that's it's page 12 of the actual PDF.
Yep.
No?
Yep.
Are we there? Okay, okay. So our total net position is $2.106 million. Our unrestricted net position is a little over 2 million. The only thing really encumbered is what we have tied up in capital assets, and that's about $97,000, and that is just kind of the net. So the balance sheet is and continues to be relatively strong. And then hopping to the next page, that is overall the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund net position, also known as the profit and loss statement or income statement. We have basically operating revenues of about almost $27 million. It's quite, it's quite an increase from prior years. And that is mainly because we are getting, what we're seeing is sort of the pass-through of the affordable housing millage dollars that are running through the Ann Arbor Housing Development Corporation, but also an increase, obviously, in what we talked about before in the Section 8 or MTW program, and getting more funding that way, or increased funding that way. Our operating expenses are about $26.8 million, so we're showing a loss of about $115,000. And then the non-operating items are listed here, from fraud recovery to development costs and interest revenue. Basically that's another $330,000, and that means that we're reported a loss of about $445,000. That decrease is basically the decrease. So the loss position is primarily generated by the Section 8 mainstream program. We had historically, actually, we had kind of like a large fund balance for basically, and HUD ended up in in fiscal year 22 decreasing the actual revenue that they sent to us to kind of use up those net reserves. And in addition to that, we also had a loss in central office that was mainly related to like one-time things like the purchase of additional software, some construction of a maintenance office space, things of that nature. But that basically is where that all comes in. Our overall revenue for the commission, for the Housing Commission, increased by almost $4.8 million, and that's pretty significant. Again, affordable housing millage, and then additional awards and lease up of new vouchers, especially in the Section 8 mainstream program. Some of the other factors, I don't know if you want to go over the schedules. There's over the remaining schedules, there's the statement of cash flows, which basically just kind of shows how cash kind of was flowing in and out of the agency. And then there's notes. Perhaps what I should rather do is talk about sort of the major factors that did in fact, affect us from an operational perspective. And I already talked about a couple of things, related to central office and the mainstream program just overall. And obviously that we had, increased operating subsidies and grants, and tenant services expenses are higher as well. That also has to do with the additional dollars that we're getting through the affordable housing millage. And general expenses are significantly higher than the prior year for fiscal year 2022. And that is in fact mainly part of the setting up an allowance for doubtful accounts for some of the loans that were given by the nonprofit, by AHDC, to Swift Lane. Swift Lane, it was kind of the first year where we actually set those up and had to actually recognize them. So that was almost 2.5, it was over $2.5 million. Yeah, and all of those things basically kind of affected, what you're looking at in terms of the financial position and financial operation. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
I don't think so.
I guess
Okay.
one other thing that I'd like to point out is that at the very, very, very bottom, Jennifer, that is page, hold on. It starts on page. Yes, it starts on page, marked page 38. I'd just like to point out that we are, because we're getting more than $750,000 in federal funding required to actually have a single audit done. That means additional testing for the federal awards that we are given. And, basically that starts that there is a schedule of federal awards that we have to actually show that shows like where we got, like what programs we got federal awards for. And then more importantly, then if we jump to page 40, that is in fact the schedule of findings and question costs. And as you can see, there are, we qualify as a low risk auditee, and there were actually no findings for anything, including our federal awards, which is basically what we want. So hey, we have a clean opinion.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
Way to go, Willie.
Generally.
Thank you.
I forgot to write down who motioned and who seconded the motion.
I did the motion.
And I second. So I got your back.
Okay, hearing no questions, all in favor of the resolution to approve the Ann Arbor Housing Commission audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it so moves. We're in communications now, item 23-0090, Executive Director Report for January 18, 2023.
It's a long report. I'm just gonna hit the highlights. If you want to go back and read it, it's in your packet.
Mhm.
The biggest highlight is the federal government did adopt their budget. HUD is expecting a 10% increase for all of our voucher programs, which is the vast majority of our programs, as well as our family self-sufficiency program. So all of these things that might increase our rent or, admin stuff that we're doing with landlords, we should be able to easily absorb it. It ends up being several million extra dollars. So that should help out for the next year that we start implementing this. The other thing that happened is HUD required statutorily, if you've seen it in the news, that all subsidized housing have carbon monoxide devices. We all have them. All of our, anywhere you have any kind of gas or like that, you have to have carbon monoxide. So we have always had that. So in case you guys are worried. In our partnerships, we've been working with community development at the county to adopt a new affirmatively furthering fair housing plan. They're taking the lead. We're just sort of holding onto their coattails while they do all the work and filling in the Ann Arbor stuff. So that's a good thing. And when we have that ready to go, I'll bring it to this meeting and we can go over some of the findings in there. We're also working with the Housing and Human Service Advisory Board and the Attorney's Office at the city to revise the pilot ordinance, which is the payment in lieu of taxes. It should be going to the February 6th City Council meeting. On all of our tax credit funded projects, we pay $1 per unit per year in taxes. And so this is doing two things. One is allowing what's called income averaging. I think I may have talked about this previously, where you can go up to 80% AMI as long as it averages 60% AMI. So you can also serve lower income households, and your rent, total rent doesn't change. So it allows for that, as well as there's something big that I'm forgetting to tell you. Don't remember what it is, but that was the big thing. And then the other things that we're doing is we are going through our development projects. I think I went into some detail last month. There isn't a lot of change other than East Catherine. We submitted our site plan to the staff at the city, so they're giving us all their feedback, and then after that, we submit it to the planning commission. And it's becomes more of a public document. The big issues that we're having is with DTE, trying to stay below a high rise because it triggers all these extra codes, and it's been a challenge in getting rid of garbage. Those are the three big current problems. 350 South Fifth, our big issues. We're also about to submit a site plan to the city staff is garbage and DTE. Well, and funding. So our construction costs came in 55% higher than pre-COVID, which is what's happening in the marketplace. So what was once felt very financially feasible, manageable size projects are now, we're having to go out and find even more subsidies. So even though we have the millage and we have money coming in from the millage, like our gap is big enough, we have to also find other sources of subsidy. 415 West Washington, we just also submitted that PUD and supplemental regs to the city. That's the one that's primarily a market rate property with likely a brownfield financing that will, a TIF financing that will require them to include 15% affordable units. We probably will not be the ultimate developer of that site, but Catherine and 350 South Fifth, we will be part of that team. And then we're working on 2000 South Industrial. We have some ideas, schematic ideas, or, you know, like sort of boxes of ideas from our engineering firm. And I haven't heard you guys say this, but if you want me to like bring stuff at the beginning, or you're like, oh, I like that, or I don't like that, or, you know, I'm happy to bring more, get more input, or I can just kind of share with you as we're going along. I know you were interested last time on the design that we had at 350 South Fifth, but I don't know how much you guys want to be involved in, you know.
I'm not allowed to pick out curtains at the house, so I don't need much involvement.
Actually, just think just the process, how it going along, just share with us, because and I know there's a lot going on, and some of the things probably for me, it just like go over my head. So, and some technical things, and I don't think probably for me, the board, we just need to be aware of some information.
Yeah.
So, and I think so far, I think it's okay.
All right, well, I'll keep you guys as much detail as you want. We had a lot of procurement activities, mostly related to development. So there's a whole host of them listed here that I have to report to you. We have a new staff person who's a application specialist. You may have heard us talk about Yardi, which is our, you know, multi-dimensional software. We're taking that burden off of Nisha, and we are hired an actual dedicated techie type person who's going to manage all of our whole entire Yardi system. So that's super exciting. especially for Wenisha. We have our construction project manager position. We made an offer, and so we're just waiting for it to go through the HR background. And then, we had an administrative position leave, and we started hiring, and then they wanted to come back. But we'd already gone through halfway through our admin process, so we have that to fill. And then a person in our finance department, I don't know if you've met Aiden Tank, but he is, he put in his resignation because he's moving, following his girlfriend to Utah. So we have another open position, and we finally filled our 6th maintenance position, which we've had open for over a year. And we finally just filled that position. They started last month, so there's always, you know, people in come, people going out, but I'm just glad some of those positions are finally getting filled. On the operations side, we're still trying to lease up a lot of our specialty vouchers. There's a whole list of stuff of all the maintenance things we're doing at different properties. The big issue that we're working through right now is trying to get fire suppression installed at Lurie Terrace, our senior property that we bought a year ago. We did finish installing it at Miller. And so Lurie's our next one. And it's like triggering all these new codes that it was not designed to fit into that building. So we're working through stuff with building department as well as the fire chief. Fire chief's mother lives at Lurie, so he's very interested in making sure, among other things, that we have some fire suppression there. So that's our next really big project, and lots of little projects. We did get a little under $600,000 from the DDA. I think I brought up that I was asking for funding for a bunch of things that we're doing at Baker Commons. So we got a lot of stuff going on over there too. Let's wrap that up for my report. Uli, did you want to go over any financial stuff? Unless there's any questions about any of that.
I've got a carbon monoxide question. We can
Oh,
go
yeah,
through that
no, go
first.
ahead.
So, it sounds like it's not new from this housing commission's perspective of requiring carbon monoxide, but for those, and maybe if somebody's moving into a unit that's previously been using a housing voucher, it's already there, but for folks who are entering into new units, some folks have approached council about, and individuals approached council about saying that's something that it's a big cost, you know, to go out and buy individually, and something question about whether or not that's something that we should require through ordinance for every unit in the city to, you know, have a carbon monoxide. I mean, I thought that was maybe a question for Chief Kennedy around sort of safety issues, but also seems possible that we might be able to have a supply of carbon monoxide detectors as well. That might be a quicker and easier way. So I'm just curious, some thoughts on that.
I mean, I have a friend who died from carbon monoxide poisoning when I was in high school. I mean, it's tragic. It can be very easily prevented. Wenisha, I'm assuming it's required for HQS inspections to have both.
Yeah, we do it. So the HQS actual form has been modified for the inspector to look for a carbon monoxide detector.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, if the city wants to go that way, and if there's a way to help. I mean, I can't remember how much they are. I want to say they're like 60%.
I thought they were included in the fire alarm stuff,
We
can be, or-
yeah. Yeah,
because that's what they're installing.
yeah, that's what we've been doing. And we've been doing well, you can have the battery operated or you can have the hardwire. We like to do the hardwire because tenants tend to, when the battery dies, they just take it out, throw it in the drawer and don't let us know that they need a new battery. So that is more expensive though, but yeah.
Yeah, this individual was renting in a kind of traditionally student rental area. And so my guess is there's a lot of units that don't have them. So I mean, there may be a good safety reason for us to be doing it across the city, but I'm just was wondering if there was any.
We definitely do it and our landlords have to do it. Yeah. And it's probably one of our.
Are the
number one.
landlords required to put it in themselves, or is it something that if, I mean, because we don't require as a city, because in this case, the tenant was asked to provide
If I'm
one
not
to
mistaken,
get the
the new
checklist.
regulation requires us to inspect.
Even if it's a section 8
I
landlord?
haven't read it.
Oh, I have to go back and look. too.
Yeah, I looked
don't
at
know.
the summary and the summary said the PHA is required. So I'm not sure if that's different for tenant-based vouchers versus project-based vouchers. I'll have to
yeah.
read it in more detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
I
then
wouldn't be surprised if we're required to, because we have the responsibility for
to
the
make sure it passes,
Hey,
right,
they put that on us all, so.
right. I think it's a good one.
Thanks.
Miss Uli, what would you like me to bring up?
Let's start with the Housing Commission, why don't we? Because, here we are. Let me know when you have it up.
So.
Okay, so halfway through the fiscal year 2022, for December, you have the financial statements, the consolidated results just for the Housing Commission alone. So that includes COCC and Section 8 primarily. And I say Section 8, I mean, moving to work and MS5 mainstream vouchers and the emergency housing vouchers all together, as well as garden. And, you're looking at total net income, so a gain of about $275,000. That is primarily at the moment, absolutely due to the result of a higher lease up and also a higher, HAP and admin revenue that HUD basically initiates and sends to us. We were a little worried at the end of the year that, that our RNP, our restricted debt position, was negative, and we wanted to make sure that the last month of the actual voucher year, which is actually the calendar year, was adequately funded. And so asked for additional funds, and they actually sent them to us. So like I felt like we were whole at the end of December, which was good. But anyway, so basically the net operating gain, like actually noted in here, is due to the receipt of the higher than budgeted HAP and admin fee revenues in the Section 8 programs. But we figure this is all this is all mostly due to timing. And we expect that to come more in line with increased expenses over the next couple of months. The good news is we didn't go into shortfall in 2022, so the clock's been reset, and starting in January is a whole new year of voucher funding. So that's it for the Housing Commission. Do you want to hop over to
Business activities.
business activities? Oh, hold on. I'm in the wrong film. Hold on here, right here. Okay, business activities. So starting with the Ann Arbor Housing Development Corporation, we are currently showing a gain of almost $162,000. We had budgeted a loss of $34,000 and are almost $200,000 ahead of budget. The revenue itself is actually a little under budget, and but it basically is offset definitely by lower expenses as well, because a lot of the revenue that is running through AHDC now is in fact through the housing from the affordable housing millage, and would basically have offsetting expenses as well. But mostly, mostly that is all in the administrative expense realm, but also in the tenant services expense realm, which is basically where the service contracts are paid out of, and they are also, that it's also mostly due to a timing difference. The next entity here then is Colonial Oaks, and Colonial Oaks is, I can only say one thing about Colonial Oaks, it is like right on budget for everything. It's like apparently we did a really good job budgeting, because it is basically, as you can see here, everything is basically in line with budget. So I'm going to jump over to Lurie Terrace. Lurie Terrace, we kind of have a little bit more information on here. That also relates to, so number one, we have a $315,000 gain, but really, the actual net operating income is only about, $85,000. And that is because, we're going to take out $230,000 worth of in-kind revenue. That was actually for water heaters that were paid for by DTE directly. But they're still an asset to us, so we had to record it, as actual in-kind, income, basically as grant income. But the water heaters themselves all are, have been recorded as an asset and will be depreciated over several years and therefore don't show up here quite yet in the actual profit and loss statement. Again, everything is relatively within budget. There are just a couple of timing differences and differences to budget that were related to specifically some funding from the Ann Arbor the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation for part of the social services funding that actually is through PACE that is happening at the properties for the tenants, and that all is being run through the Ann Arbor through the Housing Development Corporation, not through Lurie itself. So that's kind of just a budget difference, but that's it for those three.
All right, I got Maple Tower up.
Do you? I don't. Hold on. Here we are. Okay, and then for the really for all of the tax credit properties, I mean, the hardship that we talked about, that I mentioned many times for this year has in fact been the increase for 2022. And these are preliminary and unaudited statements, meaning it is year end for those four entities: Maple Tower, River Run, West Arbor, and Swift Lane. These aren't the final numbers. They're still going to change. But overall, we've struggled this year with the increase in the insurance premiums. Especially specifically property premiums and specifically for Maple Tower. But other than that, we basically, like, everything is relatively for Maple Tower. I'm just talking about them, is basically, everything is pretty much right on budget. For River Run, it's really the same thing. There are some minor variances, some stuff that wasn't budgeted, some AED units and materials and things of that nature. But that pretty much is it. And then same for West Arbor and same for Swift Lane as well. So there's really nothing to report that is out of the ordinary. They are other than the hardships that we've dealt with before. For Swift Lane, I believe. Hold on. Oh, I think it's Swift Lane. There's also some grant revenue. Sorry, I don't have the detail right here. But anyway, so yeah, no, everything is basically within what we expected in terms of the operations for all four of them. Any questions?
No questions, Lily?
Okay.
And do you want to, the next thing is public comment, I can find out.
I move the public comment.
Mr. Nelson, we're doing our final public comment. If you are interested in making a comment, you can unmute yourself and we will be here to listen.
Okay. Okay, so we now move to adjournment. I'd like a motion to adjourn. Second,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, we are officially adjourned.